All right, hope you can hear me. Can you hear me so that I can proceed? Hello, can anybody hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I didn't even know I didn't mute.
All right,
We can hear.
all right. It's like somebody just left now. Okay, hope the network is not also disturbing her. Let's give her some minutes if she will join back. Back, man, we're waiting for you. All right, so I was about calling in the folder I created into my development environment. So I'll go to File, as usual, Open Folder. The folder was created on desktop with the name Front End Project. Call it in. All right, so the first thing is for me to create my HTML file. As usual, let me start with index.html. Then activate your HTML default file. So let me just make my title Welcome to JavaScript class. Now, I was talking about creating JavaScript file, and I said there are two basic ways, let's say two basic ways on how you can actually add JavaScripts to your HTML element. Now, don't forget that the essence of JavaScript is to add interactivity to those HTML elements you must have created. That is the content you must have published across your website pages. So that is why you cannot actually isolate JavaScript from HTML, just like the way you could not isolate HTML from CSS because they work in hand. The same thing. And that is why you spend some time to master HTML and CSS before coming to JavaScript, because you are still going to be building JavaScript on those HTML content. That's the reason why we created HTML file, because there has to be content that we are building the JavaScript on. There have to be content we are adding interactivity on. So the JavaScript is not meant to create the content. Instead, it's meant to enhance the interactivity of those content. So there are two ways. It's either you write the JavaScript file directly inside the HTML document or file, which it is called internal, just like the way we have it in CSS. So if you remember, when we wanted to write CSS file inside HTML, we have to open style and wrap all our CSS properties and their values inside the style tag. So, but in the case of JavaScript, you don't wrap them in head. JavaScript, if you are writing them inside HTML document, they should always come, they should be the last scripts before the closing of the body tag, because JavaScript is a core programming language, but HTML is just a markup language. Okay, so if you have JavaScript file before HTML, for example, if I have something like this, because this is the tag for writing JavaScript inside HTML file. Now just imagine you come here now say p tag, now say welcome to let's say Digitech. So what you will notice here is that you are saying that JavaScript should run first, then before running what? HTML, which is not allowed. By ranking, JavaScript expects that HTML documents should be executed before executing it. So I'm going to prove it to you why the order is this. We are saying that we are adding interactivity to an element created by HTML. And then you want to display the interactivity before the element, which means that there will not be room for users to feel the interactivity because the objects, the JavaScript will have been executed before the object that is meant to add interactivity on. I hope you are following. Let me get a response. Let me know if we are actually hearing me clearly.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the idea is that these scripts that you want to write here, they are meant to what? To add interactivity to this. So which means that when the user gets to the page, they are expected to see the neutral appearance of this. After some second, JavaScript will now add the interactivity to it, which makes it dynamic. That is, at some point, this test wasn't having any interactivity when the user logs in. After some second, they now started seeing some interactivity on it, which means that after it has been rendered on the browser, the JavaScript will now what? Locate it and add the interactivity. That is the reason why you are not supposed to write your JavaScript before the HTML. If it happens like that, what JavaScript will do is that, let's assume you have your JavaScript before the HTML element. When it's finished running, it will delete the HTML element. It will not allow it to display. That is why we are saying that anytime you want to add your JavaScript internally, this is internal method of adding JavaScript to your HTML content. So whenever you want to consider the internal method, you are not to write it in the head, just like we did for CSS. You write these scripts, let it come before the closing tag of the body. So it means that no any HTML content should appear after you have created the JavaScript. So it should be the last scripts before the body tag, so that all the HTML content will have been executed, then and end it with the addition of the interactivity. Now, for you to add the JavaScript, you need this tag called script. There are two types of this tag. There is one that have source. Let me look at it. There is one that have source. If you look at the difference between these two tags, one has a source, which means to define the path. So this is the one we need when we want to implement external JavaScript, which means that your JavaScript will not be written in this page. They will be written in this file and then connect it to this particular file. That is why you need this source, just like an image, for us to be able to reference the URL where is the JavaScript that is coming to add interactivity to all the HTML or any of the HTML you must have selected through either its ID or with its class. So now, since it's internal, I want to implement, so I'll stick to the one that does not have source. Now, all my JavaScripts will be written inside here. So if I'm to just use comment, I will say all your JS file or scripts should should be written here. So that is the simple syntax for internal. Now, we can now look at variable, JavaScript variable, so that we can execute it with the internal method before we look at the external method. So what is variable in JavaScript? The term variable is used to describe a storage you create within the program in order to hold values for you. I repeat, I said variable are storages used for holding values depending on the app you want to develop. So we looking at variable syntax, the first thing we have to learn is how do we declare variable in JavaScript. Variables should be declared by starting with the name definition, followed by the assignment operator and the addition of the value. Now, there are different rules for adding values into your variable. It depends on the type of data the value is. If, for example, I create variable s and I use the equals to, the single equals to in programming represents assignment, which means that like the pipe that is piping the value inside the container you have defined. So in this case, the S is the container. Now, through that equals to, which is the assignment operator, you want to dump a value inside the S. So the value, if it is an integer or number, then it does not require quoting it. If the value is a string, then it requires quoting it. So for example, if I want to store 90 in that variable, I don't have to quote it because it's a rule that says that whenever integer or float, which falls under number data type, are assigned into a variable, they shouldn't be quoted. So that is the standard rule. If you try quoting it, it means you are converting number to a string. And if you want to perform some simple arithmetic calculation, you will notice that where you want 90 to multiply with 50, it will be displaying them raw because they are not seen as numbers. Now, when you are declaring variable in JavaScript, you must specify that you have come to the end of the variable declaration. And how do you denote that? By adding what? Semicolon. At the end of writing each line in JavaScript, you must add the semicolon. So it is the semicolon that actually tells the language that you have come to the end of your coding on that line, that you want to start another line. So now that is the variable. Now let's say I have another variable, but in JavaScript, like I told us the other time, it is not professional, or it is not allowed you just start declaring your variable without accompanying them with the keyword or one of the keyword. So we need keyword to actually introduce or initiate our variable. So one of the way you tell JavaScript that I want to create variable, you say let, that this is one of the keyword. You can also say cost, or you can use what? Var. So, but for now, let's use let. So in the course of the training, at times I will use cost, at times I will use var, so that you can be familiar with them. Now, once you say let, you can now call the name of the variable. So I will say let s, comma, c, comma, d. Then I will end it there. So what you simply did is to initiate three containers yet to receive value. But the first variable has received a value S. So you now start declaring all their values. So you just open up the container first, or you just created the container first before you start allocating values inside the container. So when you say let S, C, D be container, where S receive what? 90. And then what does C want to receive? What does D want to receive? That is what you need to declare. So I can say that C should receive another value. Let's say what? 80. So I have to also end it. So what will D receive? Now, I may want to perform a simple calculation whereby I want to tell JavaScript that take the value in S, multiply it with the value in C, and the result should be stored in D. So if that is what I will say what? Answer. I will say answer, or I will use the name of the operation I want to perform. So I will say what? Multiply. I can just say what? Multiply or multiplication equals to. Then I will now reference S times, this is your times in programming, this asterisk, times C. S times C. Then I will also end it. Don't forget that you must always end your variable, your line of code to show that you want to start writing a new code. So after this, unfortunately, if you go to the front end, JavaScript will not output the result. At the moment, what could have happened there? JavaScript will have taken the value in S, which is 90, the value in C, which is 80, multiply it based on the operator you are using. If you put plus there, it will add it. If you put minus, it will subtract it. So whatever operator you are using will determine the result you are going to get. And then it will have calculated it and stored the value, the answer in multiply. So for you to see the answer, you have to print multiply. And in JavaScript, there is what we call output method or functions. These are functions that we use in displaying the results of our calculation or our programming. So for us to see this, if I go to the front end by right-clicking and selecting my server that will enable my results to be outputted on the browser, you will discover that it will not display any value. Why? Because you have not involved any of the JavaScript answer display. So what you have here is just what you created with the HTML element, which is this. So everything you have written in JavaScript have not been implemented in your browser just because you have not called any of the method. Now, to use the method, let me use comment to display. Make sure you copy everything in your notes to display JS results, comma, use any of the outputs method. Use any of the output methods. Any of the output method. So it depends on how you want the result to be displayed. That will determine. So how many of the output method we have? So I will just list them. I'll start confirming them one after the other. So let's say the first one is we have alert. Alert is one of the output function in JavaScript which we can use to output or display our result via the application. Are we together? Can you hear me? Please let me confirm again.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I'll try to list out the various output functions we can use to output our JavaScript results. So we have we have a console.log. We have console.log. All these, make sure you are writing them because I'm not sure you get the video immediately because it's cutting. Now, the next one is, let's say the third method is document.write. These are methods that can be used to display JavaScript. Then the one that is must use is a must use, and at the end of the day, that is the one we will be using more because you are supposed to be writing JavaScript on HTML, not writing it to stand alone. Most of these ones that I've mentioned, they are only good for debugging when you are trying your skill. You are trying to confirm certain things, not when you are implementing JavaScript in a real website. So the one you will use most is the one I'm about to write now, which is a document, or let's say what, writing JS in HTML. So this one uses a syntax. So when I get there, you understand it. So this one is when you are writing JavaScript directly on HTML, which is the most used. Now, let me start. I'm going to output this calculation with alert. Alert is a JavaScript function or method that display the output in an alert box. It does not display on the web browser body. It will pop up like a message. It will not display the value on the body. So if what you want is that just to pop up the answer of multiplying the value in S by the value in C, then you can use alert. So if I want to use alert, I will simply say what? Alert. Then I will supply the variable holding the results. The variable holding the result is what I will supply as the function input. So what I will simply do is to always end it. Once you are done writing JavaScript code, don't forget to always what? End it. Now, if I run it again, if I go back to the front end, you see it's already alerting it that it says what? So let's refresh the page. So this is the answer. So when you multiply 90 by that value 80, this is what you get. But unfortunately, it's not displaying on the browser body. Instead, it's coming up as a pop-up message. It has its own advantage. For example, when you build form application that somebody can fill, maybe a simple contact form, you might program it that when the form, if the form submits successfully, it should alert submitted. If it does not submit, it should alert not submitted. So then, before you can program that kind of conditional statement, we will get to what we call JavaScript control structure. But for now, we just want to understand the basis first. So this is a simple demonstration on how to use alerts as one of the methods for displaying JavaScript results. Now, I will just simply comment this and use the other method, which is the console.log. How do I use console.log to output JavaScript result? So you simply write console.log. Now, the unique thing about console.log is that it output its result in the development environment of a browser, not in the user interface. So what does that mean? If I should pass in the variable name, I think there's a mistake there. Okay, that's multiply. So if I should pass in the variable name into its function, or I don't know if I copy everything. Okay, Control C, and then submit that as the function input. Then if you run it, you are not going to find the result there. But definitely the result is there. Only thing is that this one is for debugging. We don't use this one to write or to build real website, except where the scenario matches. But basically, it will display its answer in the browser development environment. And for you to see the development environment, you have to inspect the page. So how do you inspect the page? You simply right click on it, then you now come to what? Inspect. So from here, you should be able to see the particular result you outputted in the console. So the next thing is for you to identify the console. This is a console here. So when you click here, you see the result here. So you can see it now. So we actually outputted it, but it displays the result in the console. So this one is just for debugging of code. You are not supposed to use it in a real scenario where you are adding JavaScript to your content. So you can just click here to come back. So is that clear?
So this one now, why are we learning it?
Hmm?
Why are we learning this thing now?
Which one?
This console. Since we
Why
are
are you
not going
learning
to
it?
implement it.
Okay, I should skip it.
Like, where are we going to implement this console now in case we want to do website?
Yes, you will use it to test your code. That's why I said it's for debugging. When there is an error, let's assume that you are trying to use alert. Sometime based on your browser updates, some of this method may not respond. So when you are looking for whether the problem is from the alert you are using, you can say, okay, let me use console.log to check. So if you discover that console.log is able to display it, then you will now know that, oh, that means the problem is not from you. It is from what? The method, maybe the alert that you are using that is not working. So it is actually for debugging, and you will definitely use it for so many scenarios just to confirm what is wrong with your code when you run into problem.
Okay, like maybe all those ones we are doing refresh. Where is the problem coming from?
So you can say, okay, maybe you write a code and the code is not executing as expected, and maybe you are using this method to output it, or you are using this method. So sometimes you may want to know whether is it your code that is wrong. So you now begin to try different method. But if one is able to display it, then you know that your code is correct. So that's why they said this one is for debugging. When you are trying to debug your code, looking for where the error is, so you can use it. Hope
Okay.
that explanation is clear to you.
Yeah, I understood the explanation.
Okay, so outside what I just explained now, in as much you are a learner, you are supposed to learn any method that is available. It can increase your knowledge library. You might go for an interview now. They might ask you, list 5 or 4 JavaScript output method. Now, because you consider it not to be relevant, you did not pay attention to learn it. And meanwhile, that interview, they are not asking you to deploy it, but they just want to know whether you are aware that there is something called what? Console.log. Okay, so like they say that no knowledge is waste. As we continue, you will see different scenario where I will be using it to verify certain things so that I will not be beating around the bush. So I have confirmed alert and I have confirmed console. Be paying attention because once I've confirmed them, I will give you an assignment or classwork. So make sure that you are following. So now I want to confirm this one. This one is only good for debugging as well. At the end of the day, these are the ones you are going to use. One, and what? The alerts. But you will use alert, let's say 10% out of your entire web development. Then you will use this one, let's say what? Almost 80%. So of course, this and this and which other one? And the console will just be for debugging, like backup. So now, if you are using this document.write, it will display the answer on the browser body, just like the way HTML have displayed its content on the browser body. So how do we use it? So let me comment this to avoid interference. So I will just come here and say document. Remember, we are just learning all these output method, so that the course of the training, when I start using them later, you will not be asking me, why are you using this function? Right? So I will supply the same variable that I want to output, Control C, and pass it into the function argument. So if I go back to the front end, you will see that what? It printed the answer on the body, unlike the console that displayed it in the development environment, or the alert that pop it up as a message. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I want us to be observing as you are going. You know, when I started, I said the purpose of adding JavaScript to your website is to improve the interactivity of those HTML content you must have created. Now, you can see that the alert was not able to write on this. The console was not able to write on this. Then the document.write was not also able to write on this. Now, you will now see the reason why I said this is unavoidable method. This is the most used method because this one allows us to write the action on the HTML. And that
That
is
is
the
the one that is causing the issue.
eh?
Is it the one that is causing the issue?
Which of the issue?
You say it allows us to write on the HTML.
Yes, that is the right one. For example, maybe you want to write a certain function on this. It could be a button that when the user click on this button, they will see a form. Or when the user click on the button, they will see this calculation. That button is HTML element. So which means that you are writing a JavaScript function on that button to perform certain what? Action. Now, you can see that alert will not allow you to write any function on the HTML content. Console.log will not also allow you to write any action on your HTML element. Then the document.write will not also allow you. Those one displays on their own. So that is why we want to consider this very one, which is writing JavaScript actions on the HTML element. That is what we want. We want a situation whereby when the user gets to the page, certain program JavaScript actions should be reacting on the image you must have created with the HTML, on the form you must have designed with the HTML, on any of the maybe H2 or paragraph, any of those content you must have created with HTML. They are the one we want to actually add interactivity on. So we need a method that can allow us to display the function on the HTML element. So if I want to use that method, there is a criteria that need to be met. And what is the criteria? There must be HTML elements that must be used to render it. So pay attention here now. and that HTML element should not have a content for now. I will come back to when it should have content. So you just create an element like this, then you have to add an attribute ID to it. I believe you still remember attributes. Then the ID can be demo. So which means that you want to connect JavaScript action to this element with this ID. So how will JavaScript know which one I am going to write my function on? You have to give it an ID, because I can have another p tag here, maybe doing something else. Let's say what? Welcome. So how do I tell JavaScript that it is this one or this one? I want you to what? To manipulate its value, or to add certain interactivity or action on. I have to what? Identify it with either class or ID. But for now, we are working with ID. So which means that I want to write this calculation. Pay attention here now. I want to write this calculation inside this. Because what we did before, we displayed the calculation on its own. Now, I want the calculation to be displayed by an HTML element. So which means that this part, you will use this method, because you are saying that the answer that we were displaying independently before now, with alert, with document.write, with console.log, now we want to render it, we want to output it to the user with what? An HTML element with an ID called demo. So that is why that method is this. You say document dot get element by ID. So this is the method. Then you open the bracket. Now it is case sensitive. I want you to take note of that. It is case sensitive. What do I mean? Look at it. The get is small letter. The E is capital letter. The B is capital letter. The I is capital letter. This is camel case. I believe we must have talked about camel case. Now, you are saying that the calculation that will have happened here, the answer should be outputted through this HTML. And this method said that if I am going to output any element with HTML, if I'm going to use HTML to render the value to the users that will visit this website, then that you must specify the ID of that element that you want to use to render the value. That is the reason why you say document.getElement. Which of the elements you want to get? This word paragraph by its ID, not by P, not by the tag name, by the ID. So now that ID is a string, so you quote it inside it. Now you type the same demo. So which means that JavaScript is going to travel to this HTML section and identify which of the elements is carrying what? This ID, and use it to what? To display the result here. Normally the result, we will have typed it manually here. But we are saying that the calculation has been done in JavaScript. That is the reason why I delete what I have there before. Because if I do not delete what I have there before, it will delete it by itself. So there's no need. So what we are saying is that the value you are supposed to type here is coming from JavaScript. So how do you now pass it in? How do you now pass it in? Let me do a kind of illustration so that you can understand it. So you are saying that the value that will be displayed here is coming from this variable called multiply. So JavaScript will call it and put it here for you. So this is what we mean by writing JavaScript result inside HTML. So when that is the case, that is when you use this method. This method you cannot use this method to write any value here. You cannot use this method to write any value here. You cannot use the alert also to write any value here. The only method that can write in an HTML element is this one, because it carries the function that says get element by ID. So if you are asked now, if you want to use this method, how will you recollect, how will you identify the element? Is not there, no ID. So now, once you have picked the ID of the element, you have to use the HTML storage in this JavaScript. So which means that what? You have to hold this with HTML storage that is attached to this method. So you now do dot HTML, this one with this dot HTML dot inner HTML. So this inner HTML is, I want us to understand it. So this, what we are seeing here is HTML storage. This is what is going to hold what ordinarily you are supposed to type between this place. So you are saying that what I will have typed here manually that is already calculated and stored in a variable in JavaScript, I want this one to hold it and send it to what? To this. So now this one will collect the value from here. So that means what? The value here is coming inside it. That's why I say what? This is HTML storage. This is HTML storage. So this is what is storing what is to be outputted through the HTML. So now what will happen is that this one will receive this value, and then this one will send it to this place, and then this one will display it to the front end. So now let's go there and see how it works. Now you will have to say equals to. You now say equals to, then you now put the what? The multiply there. So which means you are saying that then you now end it. So what we are saying here is that this method, this document dot get element by ID will pick this element. And once it pick this element to this place, it will now want to dump the value inside the element content section. That is why you did not put anything here, because you assume that the value is coming from JavaScript variable. So now you concatenated this HTML. This is just like an attribute which is used to attach the value that is coming from JavaScript to the ID that is selected. So here, select the ID. Here, we come here and pick this, but no value has been added. Now, dot inner, we collect the value from here and add it here. Then it will now what? Because we say join, it will now what? Pass it here. So now if I go to the front end now, you will see look at it, the result has been outputted here. 7,200. So which means that the calculation, the result you have here is stored here. And this method have selected this, and this is using this element to output the result. Exactly. Flourish. Exactly. Now programming they start to HTML and chat play. So this is the core programming that we're talking about. You can see the communication. Now, I would like to do something else. If, for example, now so that you understand, don't worry, it is normal. Just make sure that you pay attention, because all these things we are going to be repeating them often. There's no way to not enter. People that know it, they don't have two heads. Or how many head do I have? Is one. It stressed me like this too. That is why I have to thank God I'm even using online method to teach you. If it is class now, I will not be able to illustrate all this that I did that will have given you exactly what the communication is. So now I want to show you this thing now. Just look up. I want to create another variable. So here now I will come here, I will say I can actually have different scripts. I can come here and use what. Remember that we are still learning internal way. We have not come to external. Probably we will look at external in the next class. I don't want to distract us. Let's execute all our JavaScript code today with the internal so that we can focus on it. Then the next class, all the JavaScript code I'm going to execute, I'm going to use external so that you will not be distracted. So I can open multiple scripts for writing different set of code, provided I am still within, as in before the body, no HTML element should come here. So here now, I will say, I'm using cost. Now, remember I said these are the method or the keyword you can use to introduce variable. So I will say costs. I will say costs, first name. Okay, let me use first underscore name is equals to, this is a string variable now. These ones are number variable, prosper. Then I will end it. I'm still going to use this method though. Just pay attention. My cost is not correct. Cost. So now I have created a variable using constant. This constant means that what? It will not change. On no condition as you proceed with the coding, you change prosper. But when you say let or var, which means that what, at some point, 90 can change to 100, 90 can change to 50. But once you are using cost, it means that you are saying that this is constant across the entire coding or programming. Now, I will not do again cost middle name, middle underscore name equals to, is a string also, eloho. Then I must also end it. Now, I want to display my name. My names are Egwero Prosper, and I am 20 years old. So I'm trying to store all the variables, all the values that I will use to give that statement. My names are Egwero Prosper, and I am 20 years old. So which means that I have to do cost. Programming is sweet to cost age also, because I need to store that 20 years. Age is number, so I don't have to quote it. I will also end it. Now I have captured all the key values that I will use to build that app. That's my name, Egwero Prosper, and I am 20 years old, is an app. And before I can develop that app, I need to store all the key values that I am going to use to build that app. That is what I did first now. So I'll store my first name, my second name, my middle name, and the age. If, for example, now I'm going to also add and I am from Delta State, which means that what? I will now say what? Cost again. Cost state. Then state is a string. I'll quote it either with single quote or double. So I'll say Delta. Just pay attention, you will get the whole logic now. Now, I want to output that statement. Now, I will have to create, since I want to use this method, there must be HTML elements with an ID that I will use to render, because I want to display all this information using this. So I will now come here, I will say this one is demo 2. This one is demo 2, and I don't want any value to be there because the value that is going to display, they have already been stored in what? In variable. So I will just be referencing them from the variable. Now, to output them the way I want it, I will say document dot get element by ID. And what is the ID? The ID is what? Demo 2. After this one, I will allow us to go and digest this one, because if it's too much, it will confuse you. Now, Now, I want to start calling all these values. I want to call first name. I want to call middle name. I want to call age. I want to call state. Now, if you look at that expression, my names are Egwero, Eloho, and I'm what? 20 years old from Delta State. From my name are, they are not stored anywhere. So which means that what? You are going to identify them as string as you are constructing that statement. So what you are going to do is that you will now say dot inner HTML equals to, I'll start with a string like this. I'll write my names are, now I will come outside. What we call concatenation. My names are, why did I put this word in a string? Because they are not stored anywhere in my program. They have not been captured in any variable. So they are coming in between. So when I get to where I want to mention what I have stored in my variable, I will concatenate it with plus. I will say plus. My names are, I want to call what? First name. So I will now come here and highlight this, Control C, I'll put it here. So which means that when JavaScript gets here, it will call Prosper from here and say what? My names are Prosper. Then I will now concatenate again. Now I would like to have space. I don't want Prosper to merge with this text. So I will concatenate empty space. This is empty space before I put the plus. So which means that after writing my names are plus empty space before you call what? Prosper. Now the same thing here, I will concatenate empty space, and then before calling the next name, plus what? I will call middle name. After this, we are stopping. So you take it as an assignment. Once you receive the video, go through it. Practice it very well before the next class. My name are this, then I also want to concatenate empty space here so that this middle name will not merge with this. So I will also do empty space here before adding the next one. So the next one I want to call, my names are Prosper, because this one we call Prosper from here. Middle name shouldn't be quoted. Middle name should not be quoted. What I would have, once the color is not this, it means that you have converted it. You have already stored it. So what you are supposed to put here is this, because it's the space we want to concatenate. Then you add the plus. Good. Now, let me see what I need to remove here. So my names are Prosper Eloho. So middle name is Eloho. So I will now concatenate empty space also before I call the next value. I'll put plus here. My names are Prosper Eloho, and I am. So remember that I will bring in another string. I am, concatenate empty space. I am, concatenate also plus. I am age. I'll call age, Control C, so that I can call 20 when it gets here. Now we are going, I am 20 years old, or 20, I am 20. Now if I want to put that here, I need to also concatenate another string. I am 20 years old. Let me put it here. So we still have one more to call, which is what? From data state. So I'll put plus there, also concatenate empty space, plus again. Then I am from what? Okay, from is a string. So I will say from data state. So what I'm going to do here is also concatenate empty space, And then, of course, the last one, I don't need space. I'll just put plus states. I'll just put plus states. Then I'll end the code. So you can see now, if I output it now, if I go to the front end, you see all of them. My names are Prosper Eloho. I am 20 years old from Delta State. So you can clap for ourselves. So you can see we have. So this is for you to understand the concept. Any question? Mrs. Constant, I'm not hearing your voice. So. Oh yeah. If there's no question, this is where we'll stop so you can go and master it. So maybe you should just snap the entire code, but I'll try and send the video so that you can go through it and apply it.
Oh, yes, sir. Scroll down. Let's snap them.
Okay, so this place that you stop now, that means if we go to the front end, the thing will show.
Yes, now look at it now.
Okay.
So you can see that it has called all the value from their respective variable. Those ones that were not captured in the variable, that is why I was using string to capture them. That plus I was putting so that I can have this space. If not that I added the plus, all this space wouldn't have been there. Everything will just mesh together. So that is what we achieve by adding all this plus an empty string plus empty string. Wherever you want space, you add what plus empty string. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Can I end the class?
Sir, wait to scroll up. Let
Up
me
like
get the last part. Still go up.
She's still snapping now.
should I scroll down or up?
Up. Which one is up?